how native plants mirror our UU principles. Um, and we're getting really techie because now I'm taking over on slides and I'll be doing my own. And yeah, we will go through it here. So, before I begin, speaking of being among the wildflowers up here, during my earlier gratitude for the collaboration, I failed to mention our wonderful, beautiful, I'm going to call her a florist, Lynette, because I brought a big 5-gallon pail of flowers from my yard yesterday, and this is what she graced us with, and it absolutely is gorgeous. And honestly, it feels, I don't know, there's something, I feel I have extra feels this morning because it feels really lovely to be surrounded by flowers from my yard. To be talking about something I'm so passionate about that I was nervous this morning and yesterday. Yeah, and it just feels really special to be here with my UUs who are, you're like my prairie. You're like my prairie inside. So thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited and honored to be here talking about native plants and specifically prairie communities and how they mirror our UU principles and values. And I know, so originally I've delivered this talk before at a different UU church, I think 10 years ago. And it was when we still had our 7 pillars. And so I'm not going to really go into the UU part of it much. You guys, I feel like our principles are pretty strong. We have them on our back wall. Steve and I wore our t-shirts matching yesterday all around town. He was kind of embarrassed, I'm not going to lie, that we were matching at Fleet Farm. But we know, I feel like we know and we live our values pretty well. So I'm going to really focus on talking about the prairie side of things, and I hope that your ears will pick up to all of our UU words that we use that are just naturally kind of organically come out when you're talking about these great plant communities. And I also want to take a moment to kind of send a thank you out to the universe and remember some of our nation's great environmental and conservation mothers and fathers. And maybe you'll have some in mind for yourself to think of too. But a few for me: Margaret, Marty, Maury, Jane Goodall, Rachel Carson, Aldo Leopold, John Muir, Gaylord Nelson, just to name a few, have influenced our landscape and the way that we look at nature and the wild outdoors. Without their foresight for our state and our country, and honestly, the world would look very different today. I've been a nature girl all my life. I gotta put stuff down, I'm too fidgety. I've been a nature girl all my life, and I fell in love with the great outdoors at a very early age. I was exposed to all sorts of nature adventures as a child, which forged my bond with Mother Earth and led me down a path of environmental advocacy pretty early on. I've been blessed on my journey to experience the magic and wonder of our natural world in many facets of my life. I was blessed to be the community green team leader for Starbucks Coffee in Buffalo, New York, coordinating environmental volunteer efforts for over 15 cafes in the Buffalo area. I worked as the executive director and education coordinator for the Godfried Prairie, an arboretum here in Fond du Lac, which is our town's largest green space with over 42 acres of restored prairie and a formal arboretum, which hopefully we'll visit today later if it's not 105 degrees once I get done talking. I've also had the opportunity to sit on Lake Winnebago Clean Waters Project Committee, which was a group of concerned citizens focusing on educating folks about groundwater quality issues that we face today. So in addition to all of those kind of background things, the last 5 years I've spent doing nature education and nature artistry for Design Lab over at the Fond du Lac County Library and at Marian University. And that was a year-round camp that served Fond du Lac's youth. So I feel really, really blessed to be able to get my to get my passions out in really productive ways in our community. In addition to this, with the support and help of my loving husband, Steve, and our son, Hollis, we've participated in over a dozen community events in the Fond du Lac area through our nature farm, Wander Way. Teaching folks about living in and with nature is a passion of ours, and with our current climate, people are really looking for more ways to get back to the land. It gives a great opportunity for us to share our passions and our practices of our life experiences. In the opening reading, Prairie, Rusa leaves me with a haunting feeling. The prairie knew. It was an example of another piece of man's destruction on our planet. And the prairie knew. And I believe that what we have done with our prairies ultimately really is happening to a lot of natural places on our planet. Everything has kind of been crunched down and made smaller and smaller or completely wiped out. But today, with the world in chaos, I do want to offer you a glimmer of hope. Today, we will focus on resurgence. We will talk about roots and think about how growing our roots deep and connecting with those in our community will help us get through and, dare I say, thrive in the world we live in. Now I hit it again. I think I went too far. Okay. So advice from a prairie. This kind of was what got me started on wanting to do a talk like this. The words that are on that screen really kind of hit home, and I thought, wow, this kind of feels like you. So that was kind of my first glimpse into what was going to end up being here today. Because you see, prairies are magic. They are wise, deep-rooted communities that thrive on the diversity around them. They embrace the diversity and for hundreds of years have sustained extraordinary amounts of life. And like I've said, I find it almost uncanny how easy it is to kind of put together our principles and our values with just the way that nature works in a prairie plant community. Those very essences of what that prairie was and still is in tiny remnants, nearly overpowering. So I do want to go back, and this is where it'll get a little education time. Why did it do that? And we're going to go back in time a little bit, and I'm going to talk about pre-settlement. So on this map, and you don't need to necessarily read what the things are. The color blocks are really the important things, the green, the yellow, the blue. Though that's what the United States looked like pre-settlement, before prairies were gone. That's how much of the United States was. So 1/3 of the U.S. It was prairie. There was actually 4 major types of prairie. And the species of plants that grow together, right, form a community. And then those communities get different names. So that's basically just what that's representing, those really huge communities of plants. And there's many, many types, like I said, of prairies that fall into specific community types. And I'm not going to go into all the terms because there's tons of them. And I mean, honestly, we're talking pre-1800 this is what the United States looked like. But the important point is that each plant community very much relied on the interconnected web of life to sustain it, much like we rely on the interconnected web of our community, and it's kind of essential, right, for our harmony. Each plant community needs specific conditions: water or lack of water, nutrients, soil type, etc. They also need and attract specific species of pollinators and insects. And there's a lot of species when it comes to a prairie, and there's a lot of specifics when it comes to a prairie. But the one thing, and you'll notice on this, and this is one of my favorites, you'll see this slide again. One of the things that's common to all of them is very deep root growth. So the very first on this side, or that side, where it's like tiny and you can't see any roots, that's turf, that's grass, right? Regular, that's our lawn. And then all of the other species represented are native plants. So right, deep roots. It's a real serious thing, and it's like this is what made the prairies what they were. 2/3 of a prairie plant's growth is beneath the earth. Right, really, really huge. Um, and then this is what that root growth, right, is what created that great soil. And it's what made Wisconsin and much of the Midwest prime real estate for European settlers. I think that's funny, real estate, prime real estate, that might be worded better, in the early 1800s, right? So as settlers came in, they just thought, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. Once they started digging, they had never seen dirt like we have. You know, I still talk to people that come and visit a lot from out west, and they love to just drive and see the farm fields of dirt. And they're like, look at how beautiful that dirt is. Because, I mean, a lot of places don't have it. And really, it's nothing like compared to what it was pre-settlement, but it's still pretty great. So the prairies, as settlers saw them, fell largely to their final doom after the invention of the steel plow by John Deere in 1837. And they said when they started plowing with that steel plow, it sounded like guitar strings being broken underground of these prairie roots that were just so deep, and so they had never seen plants that grew like this. Yeah, and just unbelievable. So getting a little closer to Wisconsin, so here's Wisconsin and its plant communities. Again, not necessarily super important. I just wanted to show you the representation of really what a glorious state we have. So most states are made up of 2 or 3 plant communities. If you would Google other states, you would be like, you would be amazed. So we have 11 plant and tree plant communities in our state. And it's all the glacier, right? This diagonal kind of that goes across from the green to the yellow. The green is where the glacier was and stopped. And then it melted and dumped all of everything it scraped off from up north onto the lower part of our state. So anywhere that you see yellow was really prairie. This also is a pre-settlement map. This is pre-settlement. All of that part of Wisconsin would have been, sea of prairie. From here to Madison, basically, you would see nothing but grasses. Really, really, really cool. Another really cool thing about our state, and really I feel very blessed because my family takes advantage of this, is you can drive from deep prairie to North Woods in a matter of hours, right? You can go up to Door County and be in very rock-like escarpment, karst formations, and go to the southern part of our state and be in a driftless, beautiful, and I didn't, growing up here, I didn't know this. And it wasn't until I was an adult and moved back and was just absolutely floored by what the glaciers did to our state and the plant communities that it supported. Let's see. Now this is where I knew I was going to get off. So I have to. So as you can see here, right, we were almost half prairie. And now, I mean, many of us have driven down to the southern part of our state. It doesn't look like this anymore. It's agriculture, right? I have one more picture for you guys to look at, bringing it even closer to home is Fond du Lac County. So even just in our county, we have 4 total plant communities, just in our county, which is, I mean, look up Nebraska ones, guys. Like, it's crazy. We really, really are blessed. Once upon a time, prairie covered 60% of Fond du Lac County. So we were from basically the ledge south. We were solid prairie. And it was said that you could look from the top of the ledge and you could see it was a sea of grass forever, forever, forever. I mean, a few dotted trees, right? There's still a few of those huge oak trees that are a few hundred years old. You see them when you drive down to Madison on 151. But I love to just imagine that. Like, it blows my mind. It's a very, very cool thing. Now, another one, current land use, or current, this is our current land use now. So now we're up to modern times. This is what it looks like. Um, and you can see where the prairies lied, right? Where it's white is basically was where prairies was. The eastern one, how it branches off to the east, that white, that's our northern hardwood forests, our eastern northern hardwood forests, right? We've depleted them by 70% since I want to say like maybe the 60s. So those, and that white, what that white, can anybody guess what that white is representing? Agriculture. Yeah, agriculture use. So from going from that vast, huge prairie to farmland um, in probably 50, 75 years, gone. Mm-hmm. Yep. So as you kind of gaze on that and get that feeling, let's talk about what we can do, right? And well, first I'm going to give you a little more education about these prairies because they are so cool. We talked a lot about these root systems, right? I think I have one more of that root one. That's a better one to look at while I talk. Yeah, that's better to look at. So really crucial for the plant's survival, right? To be able to survive harsh winters with no other trees or anything protecting the harsh grounds. Those root systems are really what keeps those plants alive and thriving and being able to come back and resurge in the spring. And those root systems also, right, as plants die off and parts of roots die off, they create a really, really dense, nutrient-rich soil. Underground insects are attracted to that. And that's really, it was really the demise of the prairie was because of their root systems. So it's like, it's kind of one of these things where it's like, man, you're a really amazing plant, but those roots really did you in. Because that's what we were attracted to. That's what we needed to be able to start our settlement in the United States. So yeah, we'll touch on this again, but some more interesting things about prairies. So prairies have some really really heavy hitters for keynote speakers. Well, I don't know. Maybe he could. I don't know. He looks like he could just start. Keynote species. And having that really firm ground foundation is what allowed prairies to support herds and herds of these American bison. The plants adapted and embraced the diversity and even used these herds, great, huge herds of these creatures to their advantage. Can you imagine plants using herds of buffalo? They did. Seed moving, right? Bison were a major, major influence in seeding and reseeding prairies. It's with their wallow in, right? Like pigs wallow in mud. Prairies or buffaloes do that in the prairie on the grass, and they're rolling around, and then they walk off and start migrating and shake and disperse seeds. And it's a really, really lovely relationship that they have. So just by walking around and standing in the breeze, they were really doing a lot of this work. And as a huge species that a lot of ecosystems could not support, right? Because of how much, really it's the land use of them. They're huge animals. They destroy everything that they go on. But the prairie could handle it. And then all the way on the opposite side of it, another really, really valuable keynote species in the prairie, and I think these two are really the most important, is a prairie ant. So even the smallest creature is viewed as value and sustained and connected through that web and considered to be of very great worth. So in a prairie, an ant is a very, very proficient seed mover, right? That's all they do is they move seed. They're putting them down into their holes. They're moving it over here. They're going over here. They're tiny, but they are mighty, and they move so much. So as they collect over the winter, they collect way too much, and then their kind of overabundance turns into new plant life and species getting moved around And nature just has a way of letting that all work out, even with the tiniest players and the hugest players. And I always really appreciated that about the prairies and us, right? You use and us. It feels like us. We get into the seasons of the prairie. So a prairie is always going to use every available resource for survival, but it does so in a sustainable way, with its roots 10 plus feet below the ground, acting as a wick and filtration system for the Earth's groundwater. The prairie is taking care of its precious and most important resource, water, and it's a thing we all need, right, to survive. This holds true throughout the seasons. In the fall, when the plants go dormant, the leaves fall to the ground. The prairie is making a nutrient-rich bed on the ground that will harbor tiny insects and mammals through the cold winter. The flower heads, long dead, are full with seeds that sustain life of small mammals and birds through the season change, and some of those seeds may even start new life in spring. And don't forget the glorious spring. When life abounds, new growth is everywhere. Dead leaves from the last season are melting rich nutrients back into the soil. And this time of the year also brings the lightning storms, which the prairie embraces openly and accepts as a part of its natural rhythm. And even the most harsh conditions, like fire, I mean, we all think we've been through fire this summer, we've been dealing with it. The prairie openly accepts this and actually has made it part of its community. Tree saplings, so you see they're being so tiny, can't tolerate fire. So that's actually what keeps those trees from regrowing in a prairie, is those fires. And you see them, thankfully, we don't see wildfires in our state, but we do see these prescribed burns, or we'll see notices of a DNR doing a prescribed burn. And that's what they're doing. They're mimicking that nature, because that's what would happen. A lightning would strike and it would get in that dry crisp and it would go up, and they burn like that. It's done in 20 minutes and it all turns into new life. And without it, the prairie would turn into trees and there would be no prairie. So it's just another interesting way. Let me see, I have to read what I actually wrote because it's better than what I'm going to say off the top of my head. So what looks like a destroyer and a terrible menace to the prairie is actually its loyal protector. And I find a little comfort in that image of the prairie literally feeding itself to its slayer willingly, knowing that the regeneration of its next season is going to be so amazing because of the sacrifices it made. Like we've mentioned, I will offer a little glimpse into the greatest season of all, summer, after service, if anyone's interested today, to look at the prairie out at the Godfried Prairie and Arboretum, blooming at its peak. Right now is the busiest time in prairies. Life is just buzzing everywhere. If you sit 5 seconds still, it's unbelievable how much you see in the pollinator area. And those insects are super important. They live, because of that, the ones that live in the prairie also attract birds and small mammals, which turn into bringing larger mammals, all supported and connected and reliant on that small plant community that we call a prairie. And while most of our native prairies are gone, remnants throughout our countryside, small patches of farmland that was too difficult to plow or get cattle to, cemetery edges, and old railroad track trails have small remnant prairies. We have a small one right near our house. It's in a ditch, and I know the farmer that owns the land, and he's never touched it. There's a maternity cow pasture behind our house that's never been settled. Nothing's been back there. And then along this ditch I sat and I identified 17 native plants, forbs and grasses. And so these little patches are still out there, and they are little hubs, little habitat hubs for these species that really need them. But when I sit in that patch, the feeling of joy and mystery and awe, it's almost like going back in time. It's just such a magical thing. And then we have our other kind of prairie thing that we have going on is restored prairies. So we have a lot of restored prairies in our county. We're really taking advantage of I think the history and places that land's available, the county is putting in prairies. The Godfrey Prairie and Arboretum has been around for a long time. The Greenway Arboretum has been around for a long time. Both have great native plantings. We also have an initiative going on, and it's not just Fond du Lac County, it's a couple counties, but it's the glacial habitat restoration areas, and their goal is to do, I think the number I read was 38,600 acres of restored prairie by the time they're done with the initiative in these 3 counties. But if you ever are driving on country roads and you see those little, like, it'll be a little mowed thing, and it looks like kind of prairie grass. It's probably one of these glacial, and you can find them on your Google Maps. And you can hike on them and look around and collect seed there. But they're really, really great hubs of starting to bring these native back and restoring what was here before. So I encourage you to look for those. And even closer to home, right in maybe our own backyards, our schools, our fellowships, places that we visit a lot. Native plants make wonderful additions to urban and country yards. There's no better way to get native birds to your backyard or to your area than by planting native species. Small habitats are popping up all over our towns, planted by eco-minded folks who want to attract birds to their yards, folks that just want to kind of give back to nature. At our schools, at our parks, we're starting to see natives everywhere. And you don't have to have a huge yard. I know many folks who have nativatized, that's a word that I'm bringing to nativatized, their front walks, their city lots. I mean, a show of hands, who has natives in their yard? Yeah, we're starting, guys. It's happening. Now you all have milkweed. You all have milkweed now. And you can plant it in, well, I'm not even gonna go there. So, another really great one to bring that home and to get to know native plants a little bit is Doug Tallamy's book, Bringing Nature Home. It's a really, really great read, and it makes you understand that community, how that community works. And even if it's not a huge restored 40-acre, even if it's a quarter-acre prairie on your yard, how that creates that community. And Mother Earth will thank you so much for it. So in closing here, I really encourage you to visit a prairie. If you can't do it today, next weekend is Prairie Fest, and I'll announce the hours for that during announcements today. But get into a native planted space. You'll feel our values being lived right there in the very moment. If you give yourself a little space, if you open up and listen to the wind, you will see your worth and dignity in every stem and creature, and you will see how the acceptance of every element is nurtured. You will feel the interconnected web of life in which the prairie relies on, and you'll be in awe of how this natural community operates with the same spirit and vision that UUs have adopted. Aldo Leopold said that we abuse land because we regard it as a commodity belonging to us. And when we see land as a community to which we belong, we may begin to use it with love and respect. And these words, these were just kind of more like, gosh, this all sounds kind of but it's really all talking about a prairie right there. That was all of 10 lessons learned from a prairie. And then I just kind of threw our values up there too, that you can just see those connections are just there living out in the breeze. Thank you, guys.